August 9, 1997. Inside a New York police station, a man screamed for help, and no one came. This is a true story, and it happened during the era newspapers called zero tolerance. What you're about to hear isn't fiction. It's documented, prosecuted, and proven in federal court. It's a story about what happens when the pursuit of safety goes too far, when good intentions create a system that breaks people, both those who enforce it and those who suffer under it. And at the center of it all is a man named Abner Louima, whose name would become forever linked to one of the darkest chapters in American policing. Abner wasn't a criminal. He wasn't a gang member or a troublemaker. He was a 30-year-old immigrant from Haiti who had come to New York in 1991, chasing the same dream that had drawn millions before him, a chance at a better life. He was married to a woman named Micheline and worked as a security guard. He lived in a modest Brooklyn apartment, sent money to family back in Haiti when he could, kept his head down, followed the rules, and stayed out of trouble. On the night of August 9, 1997, Abner went out with friends to Club Rendezvous on Flatbush Avenue, a popular nightclub in the Haitian community. It was a Friday and the club was packed with hundreds of people dancing to compa music. The August heat had turned the city into a sauna, but inside the club people forgot their troubles. Abner was there to relax, to dance, to laugh with friends. But to understand what would happen to Abner that night, you need to understand the New York he lived in. This wasn't the gleaming, tourist-friendly city you see today. Just 7 years earlier, in 1990, New York had recorded over 2,200 murders, more than 6 people killed every single day. The crack epidemic had transformed entire neighborhoods into war zones. Times Square was a haven for drug dealers and predators. The subway was covered in graffiti, and violent crime was so common that seasoned New Yorkers developed elaborate survival strategies just to get to work. The city was dying, and everyone knew it. Then came Rudy Giuliani. In 1994, he became mayor with a promise that sounded almost messianic. He would save New York. He brought in William Bratton as police commissioner, a man who believed in aggressive, proactive policing with absolute conviction. Together, they transformed the NYPD with something called broken windows policing. The idea was simple. Visible signs of disorder create an environment where serious crime can flourish. Fix the small things, and you prevent the big things. American newspapers began describing their approach as zero tolerance. The message was uncompromising. Every crime matters, no matter how small. No exceptions. Officers were told to crack down on everything. Squeegee men were arrested. Turnstile jumpers faced prosecution. The NYPD flooded high-crime neighborhoods with officers, stopping and questioning thousands of people, making arrests for offenses that previously would have warranted only warnings. And the numbers started changing. Murder rates dropped, robberies decreased, the media celebrated it. For many New Yorkers, especially those in wealthier areas, the city finally felt safe. But in neighborhoods like Flatbush and Brooklyn, primarily Black and Latino communities, zero tolerance meant something different. It meant constant police presence. It meant stop and frisk becoming routine, with officers stopping hundreds of thousands of people annually, most of whom were never charged with anything. The pressure on police officers was crushing. Precinct commanders demanded results. Monthly CompStat meetings became high-pressure interrogations where excuses weren't tolerated. Officers had quotas to meet. They weren't officially called quotas, but everyone knew the expectations. Numbers had to go up. Arrests, summonses, stops. The message was crystal clear. Be aggressive, be proactive, don't let anything slide. In that environment, where officers were pushed to see every interaction as dangerous, where they were told their aggressive tactics were the only barrier between civilization and chaos, where the daily grind wore down empathy and humanity, something was bound to break. Around 4 a.m. on August 9th, as Club Rendezvous closed and people spilled onto the street, a fight broke out. Witnesses gave conflicting accounts of how it started. Maybe someone bumped someone else, maybe it was just alcohol and summer heat. Whatever the cause, punches were thrown, people shouted, and within seconds, dozens were caught in the chaos. Someone called 911. Within minutes, police cars from the 70th precinct arrived, sirens wailing, lights flashing. Officers jumped out, batons ready, adrenaline pumping. This was exactly the kind of situation zero tolerance was designed to handle. Visible disorder, a crowd out of control. Among the responding officers was Justin Volpe, a 25-year-old cop who had been with the NYPD for several years. Volpe was known around the precinct as aggressive, someone who made arrests, who produced numbers. He came from a law enforcement family. By most accounts, he had joined the force with genuine intentions. But working the late shift in a high-crime precinct under zero-tolerance pressure had changed something in him. In the chaos of the street fight, officers began grabbing people and making arrests. In situations like this, it's nearly impossible to determine who's guilty and who's innocent. Officers were trained to restore order first, sort out details later. Abner Louima was arrested that night. Police would later claim he had punched Officer Volpe, giving him a black eye. Abner and multiple witnesses insisted he never touched anyone, that he was just caught in the sweep of arrests. What happened in those moments on Flatbush Avenue may never be fully known, but what happened next is documented, testified to under oath, and absolutely undeniable. Abner was handcuffed and thrown into the back of a patrol car. Officer Volpe was driving. Another officer, Charles Schwartz, was there as well. And something in Volpe had snapped. He began beating Abner during the drive to the station. With Abner handcuffed and helpless, Volpe punched him repeatedly, used racial slurs, told him he was going to teach him a lesson about respecting police. When they arrived at the 70th precinct around 4:30 in the morning, Abner was bleeding and disoriented. He should have been processed, given medical attention, and either charged or released. Instead, Volpe dragged him into the station. Other officers saw Abner's condition, but no one intervened. Some looked away. The blue wall of silence was already forming. Volpe and Schwartz took Abner to a bathroom in the back of the precinct, away from the main booking area. What happened in that bathroom was an act of brutality so savage that even hardened law enforcement officials would struggle to comprehend it. Volpe grabbed a broken broomstick handle and committed a brutal sexual assault with it, causing catastrophic internal injuries. The pain was beyond description. Abner screamed, begged them to stop, but they were in a bathroom at the back of a police station at 4:30 in the morning and no one came to help. "If you tell anyone about this," Volpe reportedly said, "I'll find you and kill you." But Volpe didn't hide what he'd done. According to witness testimony that would emerge during the investigation, he walked through the precinct carrying that stick, showing it to other officers, bragging. "I took a man down tonight," he said. "I broke a man down." Some officers saw him. Some heard Abner's screams. Some noticed Abner lying on the floor of a holding cell afterward, unable to move, clearly in distress. But no one called an ambulance. No one reported it. No one intervened. For hours, Abner lay there, bleeding internally in agony, while officers went about their business. It wasn't until later that morning, when his condition deteriorated so badly it became obvious he needed medical attention, that he was finally taken to Coney Island Hospital. Emergency room doctors were shocked by what they found. They had seen gunshot wounds, stab wounds, every kind of urban trauma, but this was different. X-rays showed devastating damage, a perforated colon, a ruptured bladder, severe internal injuries. Abner required emergency surgery immediately. The damage was so extensive that doctors had to perform a colostomy. The medical staff knew immediately these weren't injuries from a street fight. They called the NYPD's Internal Affairs Bureau. But even then, the initial police response was damage control. Some officials suggested Abner's injuries might have occurred before his arrest. They floated theories, tried to deflect. But Abner survived. And despite being terrified, knowing that going against the NYPD could mean danger for him and his family, knowing his attackers had threatened to kill him, he told the truth. He told doctors what happened. He told investigators. He gave detailed descriptions of the bathroom, the officers, what they said and did. His family contacted lawyers. They reached out to civil rights organizations. The Haitian American community began mobilizing. And slowly, painfully, despite the NYPD's efforts to contain the story, the truth emerged. When the media got the story, New York City exploded. This wasn't just excessive force or a questionable shooting. This was systematic torture carried out by sworn police officers inside a police station in 1997 in America's largest city. The New York Times ran front-page stories. The Daily News published details. Television news led with it night after night. Photos of Abner in his hospital bed, barely able to move, were devastating. The public reaction was immediate and intense. Reverend Al Sharpton organized massive protests. Thousands marched through Brooklyn and Manhattan carrying signs reading, "No justice, no peace," and "Stop police brutality." Demonstrators gathered outside the 70th Precinct City Hall and Coney Island Hospital. Some carried brooms, symbolic reminders of what had been used as a weapon. The Haitian American community, often invisible in broader conversations about race in America, suddenly found itself at the center of a national firestorm. They rallied around Abner with extraordinary solidarity, organizing vigils, fundraisers, demonstrations. They shared their own stories of police encounters ranging from disrespectful to dangerous. Community leaders gave speeches about fleeing dictatorship in Haiti, only to find brutality here in America. Mayor Giuliani was in a difficult position. His entire political brand was built on being the tough-on-crime mayor who cleaned up New York. He had staked his reputation on supporting police, on backing their aggressive tactics, on defending zero tolerance. Now he confronted the darkest consequence of those policies. Initially, he urged calm, suggesting people wait for all the facts. But the facts were damning beyond anything he could spin. Police Commissioner Howard Safir ordered an internal investigation, but few trusted police to investigate themselves. The FBI stepped in with a federal civil rights investigation. Federal prosecutors took over because there was widespread belief that only outside oversight could deliver justice. The investigation moved quickly once federal authorities were involved. Detectives interviewed dozens of officers from the 70th Precinct that night. They collected evidence from the bathroom. They documented Abner's injuries. Gradually, witnesses came forward. Officers who had seen something, heard something, knew something, but had remained silent out of fear or loyalty. On August 13, 1997, just 4 days after the assault, Justin Volpe was arrested and charged with violating Abner Louima's civil rights. Charles Schwartz was arrested soon after. Over following weeks, additional officers were arrested and charged either with participating, witnessing and failing to report, or helping cover it up. The case became a media sensation extending far beyond New York. National networks covered every development. International newspapers ran stories about police brutality in America's largest city. The name Abner Louima became known worldwide, forever associated with one of the most horrific incidents of police violence in modern history. The legal proceedings stretched on for years. Justin Volpe initially pleaded not guilty, maintaining innocence despite overwhelming evidence. His lawyers suggested other officers committed the assault, that Volpe was misidentified. Charles Schwartz similarly denied involvement, claiming he hadn't been in the bathroom. But the evidence was overwhelming. Medical testimony was damning. Doctors explained how Abner's injuries could only have been caused by the violent assault he described. Other officers, granted immunity for testimony, described seeing Volpe with the stick, hearing him brag. Then, in May 1999, nearly 2 years after the assault, something remarkable happened. Justin Volpe changed his plea. Standing in federal court in Brooklyn, he admitted his guilt. He pleaded guilty to multiple charges, including violating Abner Louima's civil rights through assault and causing bodily injury. His lawyer read a statement where Volpe acknowledged committing a terrible crime and asked for forgiveness. The courtroom was packed with journalists, protesters, members of the Haitian community, and family members. When Volpe's guilty plea was read aloud, gasps and cries filled the room. Some wept. Others sat in stunned silence. At his sentencing hearing in December 1999, Volpe's lawyers presented mitigating factors: his youth, his previously clean record, the stress of police work, the pressure of working in a high-crime precinct under zero-tolerance demands. Character witnesses testified he had been a good person before something went wrong. His family begged for mercy, but Judge Eugene Nickerson showed little sympathy. In a scathing statement from the bench, He condemned Volpe's actions as a betrayal of public trust, as a crime so heinous it demanded maximum punishment. On December 13, 1999, Judge Nickerson sentenced Justin Volpe to 30 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. It was one of the longest sentences ever handed down to a police officer in an excessive force case. Charles Schwartz was convicted of holding Abner during the assault and violating his civil rights. He was initially sentenced to 15 years, though his conviction went through multiple appeals and retrials. 3 other officers were charged with conspiracy and obstruction of justice for helping cover up the crime. Some were convicted, others acquitted, in verdicts that satisfied no one. In 2001, the city of New York settled a massive civil lawsuit from Abner Louima for $875 million, $125 million from the city, and $625 million from the police union. It was one of the largest settlements in a police brutality case in American history. The money couldn't undo what happened to Abner, couldn't erase the physical and psychological scars, but it was an acknowledgement of responsibility. For Abner himself, the years after were a struggle. He underwent multiple surgeries to repair damage to his body. He suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, experiencing nightmares and flashbacks. He had to testify repeatedly at trials and hearings, forced to relive the worst night of his life over and over. He became a public figure when all he wanted was to return to his quiet life. Eventually, after trials concluded and media attention faded, Abner withdrew from public view as much as possible. He and his wife had children. He tried to rebuild a normal life, but he would forever be known as the victim in one of the most notorious police brutality cases in American history. Justin Volpe was released early in 2023, after serving more than 25 years of his sentence. The 70th Precinct in Brooklyn continues to operate, reformed and reorganized multiple times since 1997. New officers work there who weren't even born when Abner Louima was tortured in that bathroom. The physical space has been renovated, but the memory remains, a dark stain that can never be fully erased. The Louima case had lasting effects on policing in New York and beyond. It became a catalyst for reform, leading to changes in NYPD training, oversight, and accountability procedures. The Civilian Complaint Review Board was strengthened. Officers received more training on constitutional policing and de-escalation. The department implemented early warning systems to identify officers with patterns of complaints. But the case also complicated the narrative around zero tolerance and broken windows policing. The dramatic crime reduction New York experienced during the 1990s was real. By 2000, the murder rate had fallen by more than 2/3 from its 1990 peak. The city had genuinely become safer by almost every measurable standard. Neighborhoods that had been abandoned were revitalizing. Property values were rising. Businesses were returning. Yet the Louima case revealed this progress came with costs the statistics didn't capture. It came with broken trust between police and communities of color. It came with hundreds of thousands of stop-and-frisk encounters that yielded no arrests but left people feeling harassed. It came with a culture within some parts of the NYPD where suspects were seen as enemies rather than citizens with rights. The fundamental question the case raised remains relevant today. At what point does the pursuit of safety cross the line into oppression? When does aggressive enforcement become abuse? How do we balance the need for effective law enforcement with protecting civil liberties and human dignity? These aren't easy questions with simple answers. Police officers face real dangers. They work in difficult conditions, dealing with violence and trauma most people never experience. They make split-second decisions in high-pressure situations where mistakes can be fatal. Policing requires courage, dedication, and willingness to run toward danger when others run away. But none of that excuses brutality. None of that justifies what happened to Abner Louima. And none of that exempts police from the same laws they're sworn to enforce. The legacy of Abner Louima lives on in ongoing debates about police reform and accountability. It echoes in movements like Black Lives Matter that emerged years later but address many of the same issues. It resonates in calls for body cameras, civilian oversight boards, and fundamental changes to the culture of policing. It serves as a reminder that the price of security can never be paid with human dignity. More than 25 years later, New York continues grappling with questions of how to police fairly and effectively. Crime rates remain far below their 1990s peaks, though they've fluctuated in recent years. The aggressive stop-and-frisk tactics that characterized the zero-tolerance era have been scaled back dramatically after being ruled unconstitutional. New approaches emphasizing community policing and de-escalation have been implemented alongside continued enforcement. Progress was made. Human costs were paid. And the question that remains is whether we learned the right lessons from what happened to Abner Louima on that August night in 1997, whether we've created systems that can deliver both safety and justice, whether we've built a city where everyone, regardless of race or neighborhood or immigration status, can trust that the people sworn to protect them will do so with respect for their fundamental human rights. The story of Abner Louima isn't just history. It's a warning about what happens when the pursuit of order loses sight of humanity, when those given power forget they're accountable to the people they serve, when society becomes so focused on results that it forgets the methods matter just as much. That bathroom in the 70th precinct may have been renovated, but what happened there can never be erased. It stands as a testament to the worst of what can happen when a system designed to protect people instead destroys them. And it reminds us that true safety doesn't come from fear or force alone. It comes from justice, accountability, and the unwavering belief that every human being deserves dignity, no matter who they are or where they come from.
So, that's the end of this story, but there are plenty of other great ones right here. Before you go, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that little bell.